I think China's role has been developing and evolving within the G20 slowly but steadily. So originally when the G20 met in 2008 at the leaders level, China was a little bit unsure and a little bit ambivalent about the G20. It wasn't completely sure. Then it wasn't China that was the first Asian country to host the G20. Korea got that privilege of being the first Asian country. So during that time you can see that China has thought of the G20 as a good ad hoc interim measure, but as we move from one world order to a new world order, China has been a bit ambivalent about making the G20 permanent. Let's wait till we see what the new world order looks like and what kind of institutions will match that new world order. So China's ambivalence is the historical approach towards the G20. But I think recently we've seen China become much more engaged and ready to push the G20 forward. So in terms of expectation of leadership, I wouldn't be surprised if China did make much more of an effort to make the G20 more permanent, more robust, more able to deal with fluctuations and changes in the world. Well, the B20 is part of the way in which the G20 has expanded over the years. So we've not just got a G20, we've got a B20, we've got a T20, we've got a W20. This model of development is exactly what the G7 and the G8 went through. The way of understanding the G20's evolution is look at the G7 and the G8 and the way that evolved. It had meetings at ministerial level, meetings involving the youth of the world, involving business leaders, involving universities. So this model of expanding the G20 horizontally is something that's existed before with the G8. So I think China's adopting the model. It's not necessarily shaping a new model, it's just adopting the model, and it will be keen to manage that process smoothly. I would hope that we could find possibly a third way, some kind of new approach, because the model of globalization that we've followed for the last 2-3 decades has clearly, a lot of people have lost through that model. And if we see the Brexit vote, what we see that is not necessarily a vote about whether the EU functions or doesn't function. It's the losers of globalization expressing their frustration about the model of globalization. If we look at Trump and America, what's happening there? Again, it's people frustrated with the economic model that's dominated the world for the last 2-3 decades. So it would be wonderful to see a new third way model emerge from the summit. That's a lot to ask for, but I think that's China can certainly play a role in setting that direction.